Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It's over. The words detonated in the air like a gunshot no one saw coming, and before Nick Newman could even process the finality in Sharon's trembling voice, her hand flashed upward and cracked against his cheek with a sound so sharp it silenced the entire room. A slap fueled by years of love, betrayal, forgiveness given too freely and broken promises stacked like ruins between them, and Nick staggered back not just from the force but from the shock of seeing it in her eyes. Resolve, clarity, an end he could no longer talk his way out of, as Sharon's breath hitched and her voice shook yet never wavered, because she was done being the woman who waited, the woman who hoped, the woman who believed Nick would finally choose her without hesitation, without distraction, without another Newman crisis pulling him away at the worst possible moment. And as Nick tried to speak, tried to explain, tried to say her name the way he always did when he thought that alone could fix everything, Sharon cut him off with a bitter laugh that carried more pain than anger, reminding him of every night she cried alone, every promise he made in the heat of passion only to forget in the cold light of morning, every time she picked up the pieces of her heart while he ran to save someone else, and then, just when Nick thought this was another breakup that would eventually circle back, another storm they'd weather together, Sharon delivered the blow that shattered him completely, lifting her chin, wiping away a single tear and saying with devastating calm that she wasn't alone anymore, that she had moved on, that she had found someone who saw her, who chose her every day without hesitation. And Nick scoffed at first, disbelief mixing with desperation, asking who it was, insisting it was a rebound, a mistake, a lie she was telling herself to hurt him. But Sharon stepped aside then, opening the door to the future she'd already walked into. And the man standing there froze Nick Newman to his core. Because it wasn't a stranger, wasn't some faceless new romance he could dismiss or compete with. It was Adam Newman, his own brother, the past and the present colliding in one unbearable moment as the blood drained from Nick's face and Adam met his gaze with an expression that was equal parts guilt, defiance, and unwavering commitment. And Sharon didn't flinch as she revealed the truth in a voice that trembled only slightly, confessing that what began as shared pain, as late night conversations and understanding glances had grown into something real, something solid, something she refused to deny anymore. And Nick exploded then, anger erupting as he accused Adam of manipulation, of taking advantage, of always wanting what belonged to him. But Adam shot back that Sharon wasn't an object, wasn't a consolation prize, wasn't Nick's possession to lose and reclaim at will, and Sharon backed him up, reminding Nick that Adam hadn't promised her the world and then disappeared, hadn't taken her love for granted, hadn't treated her heart like a safety net. And as voices rose and old wounds tore open, Sharon finally screamed for silence, demanding Nick listen for once, truly listen, as she explained that loving him had cost her too much, that staying had meant losing herself, and that walking away, even into something complicated, even into something controversial, was the bravest thing she'd ever done. And Nick's fury collapsed into devastation as the truth sank in. This wasn't a phase, this wasn't revenge, this was goodbye. And when he reached for Sharon one last time, she stepped back, choosing Adam, choosing herself, choosing a future that no longer revolved around fixing Nick Newman. And Adam placed a steady hand on her back, a silent promise of protection and partnership, while Nick stood alone amid the wreckage of his own choices, realizing too late that the woman he thought would always come back had finally closed the door, for good. The silence that followed Sharon's departure was not peaceful but brutal, heavy as concrete, and Nick Newman stood frozen in the wreckage of the moment, staring at the door as if sheer willpower might force it open again. Rewind time, undo the slap, the confession, the unbearable image of Adam's hand resting protectively on Sharon's back, and for a long beat Nick said nothing at all, his chest heaving, his jaw clenched so tight it ached, because the truth had finally landed with full force. This time she wasn't coming back, while Adam, lingering just long enough to prove he wasn't hiding, broke the silence with a low, measured warning that Nick didn't get to rage his way out of this one, not after years of taking Sharon for granted. And that was when Nick snapped, his restraint shattering as he lunged forward, shoving Adam hard and accusing him of betrayal so deep it cut through blood, history, and every fragile truce they'd ever formed. And Adam shoved back, refusing to back down, declaring that he hadn't stolen Sharon, that she had chosen him. And those words hurt Nick more than the shove ever could, because choice was the one thing he'd always assumed was guaranteed. And as the brothers circled each other like old enemies who knew every weakness by heart, The weight of decades of rivalry, resentment, and unresolved hatred erupted, fists flying, furniture crashing, the sound of rage echoing through the room until Victor Newman's voice thundered from the doorway, commanding them to stop. And when Victor saw the damage, physical and emotional, his expression hardened, not with sympathy but with judgment, because in his eyes this wasn't just a family fight, it was a strategic failure, and he turned on Nick with cold disappointment, telling him he'd finally pushed Sharon too far, while Adam received no praise either, only a warning that loving Sharon would make him vulnerable in ways the Newman Empire could exploit. And Sharon, standing just outside, heard every word, her heart pounding as she realized that no matter how far she walked away from the Newman men, their shadow still loomed large. Yet she didn't turn back, didn't run, didn't second-guess herself, because for the first time she felt grounded, resolved, even as tears streamed down her face. And later, alone with Adam, the cracks finally showed as she confessed her fear, that she'd destroyed her family, that Faith would hate her, that Nick would never forgive her. And Adam, raw and unguarded, admitted he was terrified too, because loving Sharon meant standing in the direct line of fire, but he swore he wouldn't disappear, wouldn't retreat when things got hard, wouldn't make the same mistakes Nick had. And as they held each other, unaware they were already being watched, whispers began to ripple through Genoa City like wildfire, because secrets never stay buried there. And by morning the rumor mill was roaring, with Phyllis sharpening her claws, convinced this was a calculated move, ready to protect Nick at any cost, while Faith overheard just enough to feel the world tilt beneath her feet, her faith in her parents cracking as questions burned in her mind. And Nick, alone in the Newman ranch, replayed every moment he dismissed, every time Sharon asked for more and he gave excuses instead, the realization crushing him that he hadn't lost her to Adam. He'd lost her to himself, and yet even in his regret, anger simmered, because Nick Newman doesn't surrender easily. And as dawn broke, his grief hardened into resolve, a dangerous mix that promised retaliation, redemption, or total destruction, while Sharon, staring out the window of a new beginning she wasn't entirely sure she deserved, whispered to herself that it was really over, hoping, praying, that this time she was strong enough not to look back, even as the storm she'd unleashed gathered force, ready to tear through every relationship in its path. The room was silent, a tense vacuum that pressed against the walls, heavy and suffocating. Sharon's hand lingered in the air for a heartbeat longer than necessary after the sharp slap that had landed against Nick's cheek, the echo of it bouncing off the marble floors like a gunshot. His expression was a mixture of disbelief and hurt, eyes wide as if the very ground beneath him had been pulled away. The air between them crackled with a lifetime of unspoken words, betrayals, and shattered dreams. Sharon's chest heaved, her eyes glistening with anger, pain, and something dangerously close to triumph. "It's over, Nick," she spat, each word a dagger slicing through the tense silence, leaving nothing but raw, exposed nerves behind. "I can't. I won't. I'm done." Nick's jaw tightened, his voice low, tinged with disbelief. "Sharon, wait. What are you saying? You can't just..." His words faltered under the weight of the moment, his hand instinctively reaching for her, as though the world itself might be torn apart and all he could do was try to hold on to some fragment of it. But Sharon pulled back, her eyes narrowing, fire dancing in the depths of her stormy gaze. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "Not now. Not ever again, Nick. There's someone else." A single torturous pause hung in the air, and then like a bolt from a clear sky, she dropped the name that shattered everything. Adam Newman. The words hit him harder than any physical blow could. Nick's eyes went wide, disbelief flickering into horror, then into a confusing, desperate rage. "What? How?" "Sharon, he's the last person." His voice broke mid-sentence. It wasn't just shock, it was betrayal incarnate. Every fiber of his being screamed against the impossible reality. Sharon, however, stood firm, unwavering, the kind of steady force that could uproot mountains. "Yes, Nick," she said softly, almost teasingly, like a snake revealing its fangs slowly, savoring the moment before the strike. "Adam, he's not just a rebound. He's everything I ever needed, everything I couldn't find with you." Nick staggered back as though her words physically struck him, his heart lurching with disbelief. His mind raced, memories of their shared life flickering violently juxtaposed against the image of Adam. The two men, the life Sharon could have chosen, the man she had always seemed to love, and now impossibly the man she actually wanted. His chest ached, a sharp, relentless pain that threatened to choke him, and yet amidst the hurt, a simmering fire of anger began to ignite. You can't just, how could you do this? After everything, Sharon? After us. Sharon's lips curled into a small, almost imperceptible smile. It was both cruel and liberating, a symbol of her newfound power, her breaking free. After everything? Nick, after everything I realized something. I realized that life is too short to live in someone else's shadow, to wait for love that isn't meant to be. Adam, he makes me feel alive. I don't have to explain it, and I don't need your approval. The door slammed open behind her suddenly, and a figure stepped in, tall, confident, with a dangerous charm that made the air itself bend to his presence. Adam Newman. Nick's eyes widened in sheer disbelief, the room feeling impossibly smaller, more suffocating, as if the walls themselves had decided to crush him under the weight of this revelation. Adam's gaze met Sharon's, and there was a flicker of something that went beyond desire, beyond passion, something almost predatory, yet unmistakably possessive. He stepped forward slowly, deliberately, a smirk curling on his lips. Sharon's right, Nick, he said, his voice smooth, dangerous, ice over fire. It's over. For good. Nick's hands clenched into fists, every muscle in his body tense, as though he were ready to fight not just Adam, but the world itself. You think you can just walk in here and take her? After all these years? You don't even know her. The words tore out of him, desperate, accusatory, even as a part of him, shameful, unrelenting, knew he had no right to demand her heart. Adam laughed softly, a low, seductive sound that seemed to echo in the empty corners of Nick's soul. Do I know her? I know her better than you ever did. I know what she wants, what she needs. And more importantly, I know how to give it to her. Sharon stepped closer to Adam, her hand brushing against his chest as though to affirm the bond that had, until now, seemed impossible. The touch was electric, a jolt that seemed to sever Nick from any remaining illusions he had harbored. Adam. She began, then paused, swallowing hard. Her voice was steady now, resolute. We're done hiding. Done pretending. I choose him. Nick felt as though the floor had fallen away beneath him. The room spun, the walls tilted, and the air itself seemed to thicken with the unbearable weight of truth. He opened his mouth to speak, to argue, to demand, but no sound came out, just the deafening roar of his own heartbreak echoing in his ears. Sharon, the woman he had loved, had crossed an invisible line, and there was no turning back. Then, just when the tension had reached a fever pitch, a new voice pierced the suffocating air. A voice so unexpected, so impossible, that it froze everyone in place. Well, isn't this cozy? The three of them turned sharply, the shock visible on every face. And there, standing in the doorway, was a figure that no one could have anticipated. Someone whose presence changed the entire dynamic. Someone whose arrival threatened to topple everything Sharon and Adam thought they had won. It was Victor Newman. His eyes were icy, unyielding, a storm behind a calm surface. Adam Newman, he said, his voice low but heavy with authority. You've been playing a dangerous game. He stepped into the room, his gaze piercing Sharon and Nick in turn. And Sharon, you've made a choice. But do you really think you understand the consequences? Adam's smirk faltered slightly, a flicker of unease crossing his otherwise unshakable composure. Victor, this isn't your business, he said, though there was a tension now, subtle but undeniable. Victor's eyes narrowed, a predator's precision in his stare. Everything about this is my business. Always has been and always will be. Sharon, do you honestly think you can choose freely when there are strings you can't even see? Sharon's confidence wavered for a fraction of a second, her hand gripping Adam's arm. But she met Victor's gaze, defiant. I'm done living in fear. I choose life. I choose Adam. No one, not even you, can take that away from me. Victor smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. Oh, Sharon, you think this is the end? It's only the beginning. And then, in a motion so fast it was almost invisible, Victor pressed a small remote in his hand. The lights flickered, the air shimmered, and suddenly, a screen in the corner of the room lit up. Images, videos, secrets, the kind that could destroy careers, lives, marriages, everything played across it. Names, dates, betrayals, evidence of affairs, deals, manipulations, so damning that even Adam's confidence faltered, and Sharon's defiance wavered. Nick, frozen, realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about Sharon choosing someone new. This was bigger. Far bigger. Every decision, every secret, every lie that had built their lives was about to come crashing down. Victor's voice cut through the silence like a blade. You thought you could rewrite your story, Sharon. You thought Adam could shield you. But the truth always finds a way. Sharon's eyes widened in horror as the images scrolled faster, revealing connections, betrayals, and alliances she had never imagined. Adam's jaw tightened, his usual calm replaced by the sharp edge of panic. Nick realized that the woman he loved, the man he hated, and the empire he'd been tangentially part of were all now caught in a storm that no one could escape. A beat of silence passed, suffocating in its intensity. Then Sharon's hand found Adam's again, and despite the horror on the screen, despite the looming storm, she whispered, almost desperately, "We face this together." Victor's smile widened, cruel knowing. Together, yes. But the world will test you, and not all storms can be weathered. And just like that, in a single moment everything changed. Nothing was safe, nothing was certain. Love, betrayal, power. They were all tangled, fused together in a way that no one could predict. Sharon's choice had set off a chain reaction that threatened to unravel not just her life, not just Nick's, not just Adam's, but the very foundation of Genoa City itself. The room was no longer just a room. It was a battlefield. And the war had only just begun.